Welcome to the Edifice Complex, the property design and development podcast. Let your hosts Adam Muggleton and Robert Bean keep you up with who is innovating and doing great work, perspective on the adjacent possible, and challenges to the status quo.
Welcome to the Edifice Complex. I'm Robert Bean, your co-host, unofficial mediator, here with my colleague, official agitator, heavy emphasis on agitator, friend and Yoda of most everything to do with buildings, Mr. Adam Muggleton. Say hello, Sir Yoda.
Hello there. Right, so looking forward to this one. I've been stalking Gary for a little while, like a crazy ex-girlfriend. I've been watching his career. Introba has a little connection with me because I was a managing partner at Cobalt, which sold to Integral, which then turned into Introba. So we, in the DNA of our business, we're sort of like second cousins, I guess, Gary.
Yeah. I know about Cobalt. Yeah.
All right, I'm really interested in this.
Our guest started with a bachelor's in civil engineering, then came over to the evil side, and ended up with his master's in mechanical engineering, and then continued on with his training in engineering management. He holds professional engineering licenses in Maryland and Washington, and is a chartered engineer with the UK's Chartered Institute of Building Services Engineers. Among his credentials is a fellow of the American Society of Healthcare Engineers. Congratulations on that, by the way. It's an honor to earn a fellowship in any organization, really. So what do you do with the credentials that this gentleman has? Well, you become an author and a senior vice president of North American strategic growth leader at Introba, which is one of the world's largest building engineering consulting firms. Welcome to the show, Gary Hamilton.
Thank you. Sometimes it's always kind of cool, like listening to your bio and you're like, is that me? So it's
totally.
Wow,
Who is that guy? Oh, it's
Who is
that guy?
Exactly.
Absolutely.
Gary, throughout your career, you continue, like woven through your career is a lot of volunteer work. Your DTR Foundation, which is a nonprofit organization which focuses on healthcare and education, healthcare access, and community empowerment. And plus, you've also published two books, which we're going to want to talk about today. The first one, which I guess is somewhat of a memoir for you, the Ghetto Youth's Bible.
Ghetto Youth's Bible, yes.
I love that title. And then recently, Grit to Glory, which is also an awesome title. Like so many of our guests, your life and your career doesn't seem like it's filled with a whole bunch of spare time. Everybody that we have on finds a way to fill every minute of their day, which is awesome. Yours is certainly filled with drive and passion. So where did that all start? Where did it come from?
Started in my book I talk about. I actually was born in Jamaica. I was born in, my book, The Ghetto Youth's Bible, talk about, growing from the ghetto. I was born in an underserved community called Shaolin, from the Shaolin Temple. The movie, back in the days and stuff. It's, yes, it is. Exactly. It's exactly that. They were fond of that movie so much that they named a community of that. I don't know, because there was a lot of fighting that took place in the community, but in my book, I talk about it. It's nestled between two cemeteries. So it's not really a place that a lot of people want to, want to be around. But it's just the fact that basically that's where, my family, that's where I was born. That's where I spent, most of my life, going to high school. And, it was a tough background, to be honest. My dad left our house when I was 10. So I have 4 kids. So, single mother, really just trying to figure out, didn't have a career. She just was industrious enough and entrepreneur enough to, to do multiple things in terms of, she owned a shop, she sold, she baked, she was working at the slaughterhouse. So a number of different things, to help, to send her kids to school. And really, I grew up under that, environment and seeing her struggle. And that's something that, kind of put that, the fire in me to try to figure it out and try to figure out how I can, what what can I do, I can do to help her. And to really, I did, even back in the days, I used to sell in the market, with her and do all things, just to make sure that, I'm contributing, towards, I was the second of my family. So, it was kind of, not the oldest, but also tag team with my brother, who was a year and a half older than me, to try and figure out how we could really do different stuff to help her. And in doing that, I was actually, I was doing extremely well at, with school, and, went to one of the best high school in the Western region called Manning's High School, and did extremely well there, and even what, as you're saying in terms of busy, like I'm just, that's how I am. I played 4 different sports. I was a captain of the football team. I was on the chess team. I captained the table tennis team. I was on the school challenge schools team. I just always find myself just doing a whole lot. Like it's no ease up, and and I think, for some reason, I'm not sure if it's because I wanted to stay out and play that and not go back to the community. And I don't know what it is, but it was the situation is that, I just happened to do that, and always kept myself occupied, but did extremely well at high school. And one of my, the story that I talk about in my book, Get the Youth's Bible, is that when I've completed high school, I got through to go to University of the West Indies, which is one of the most prestigious universities in the Caribbean. It's shared their center of excellence all over the Caribbean, in Jamaica, and in Trinidad, in Barbados. So one of the things that I got through, but I didn't know how were going to pay for it. So that was it's just like, what do I do? My mother wasn't working, she has a shop, I said, but that wasn't really doing extremely well. It could basically feed you from day to day, but that's the only thing it could do. So I made a bold decision that I was just going to sit a year out, maybe work, and then try to pay for my university. So I actually didn't get a job, but the new school year started. I deferred my place at the University of the West Indies, and I remember, going to a soccer game and coming back one evening, and my mother said to me, "Hey, what are you going to do? Like, you didn't find a job, so the school year is started. Are you not going to go to college?" And I said, "I don't think you can afford it. We can afford it, Mom." So I was planning to sit out the year. And she basically, when I went to my, into my room, I saw a suitcase like packed. I'm like, where did she even get that suitcase? I didn't know. But my clothes and everything was packed. And she's like, well, whether you like it or not, you're going to university. And the next day, we took off, 3 hours away in a public transport, in a bus, and we were in Kingston, and she was in admission with me, like, reprimanded me, "Let's go, we're going," and try to get in. And at the time, they told us it was 3 weeks into the semester, and they said, it's too late. It's, all the spaces are full. We don't think it's possible to get in. We could put you on the waiting list. And my mother actually said, okay, that's good enough. So we went back to, we have some cousins that were, staying with in Kingston. So we went to their house, which is about an hour away, hour and a half away. And we were staying there. And for 2 weeks, my mom actually went up to the university every day. She was there,
Wow.
just sleeping for 2 weeks, just every day, just to beg for her son, ask for her son,
Wow.
and I remember at the end of the 2 weeks, that, one day she called and she said, at the time it was a house phone. So she went and got a call from the university, and she said, "You better come up to the university now. You got through." And I went there, and it's the dean of natural science. His name was Dr. Morris. He actually said to me, I actually sent to call you because I wanted to give you a warning. He said, "You, Mr. Young Man, didn't actually come any of the days here. And I actually made a decision, to give you the space, not because of you. I gave the space because of your mom, because she was here absolutely every day, even
Wow.
sometimes not to even talk to me. She actually, she would sit and she put her hands up just to be acknowledged, to, for them to know that she's there. And that's the reason why she said to me, he said, if you fail, I will personally beat you up. I will personally. It was just like, man, I'm like this.
Wow.
And he was a tall, I was 7,000, and I'm like, oh my God, but that's, that was my fire. That was, I
Mm.
realized, I call my mom, that's when my superpower. That's when I realized, man, I have someone that would never give up on me. Someone who even, when somebody say no, actually prove to me that, hey, there's also a way that you can turn that no into yes, and never give up, never back down, and just feel it. And at that point, I realized that, she wanted it much more than me. And I understood that the reason why she did, because education was our great equalizer.
Yeah.
Education was the means of getting us out of poverty.
Yeah.
And I was the first from my family to actually attend university and even high school. And she saw me as the way of getting it out. And at that point, I realized that, I wasn't doing it myself. And I realized that failure was never an option at that point. It's just everything that I did from that point was to make sure that I'm making her proud, but just to also making sure that I know that I'm never going to give up. Not that easy. Never, never, ever. And that's how I approach everything.
That is such a great story. When you think about people in your life that have that same sort of DNA,
Yeah,
and they enter your life, hopefully as an ally,
yeah, yeah,
because if
yeah.
they're an adversary, you're done.
True, true, true,
Because
true.
they will get what is in their heart. They
Yes,
won't stop. They just keep
yes,
going and going and going,
yeah.
and that's just when that happens to you, when those people come into your life, it is a blessing. It really
Oh
is.
man, absolute.
Yeah.
It's an absolute blessing.
Yeah.
It's funny. There was a story, and I remember when I was going to university. As I said, I always feel that I have everything in terms of funds. I used to be a barber also, so I did everything. I used to cut hair on campus and all sort of stuff. So I figured a way how to get my pocket money and stuff. But one of the things that she used to do, and my friends used to, laugh at me. They used to say, "I work in the pantry." Did you used to work in the pantry at your high school? Because she would buy, like, I would have bulk sugar, flour, sugar, all that, food supplies and everything that she would buy in bulk. So I'd be having it stored, and she would fry chicken, and she would store them, pre-fry them, and she would take them from, 2 hours away to the university every 2 weeks. And she would, the load she
Wow.
would come with. And like my friends, I remember my friends, they used to actually meet her if I'm in class to help carry the load that she's bringing, because they know it was going to feed the whole block that I'm living on also, because everybody, it's just
That's
like,
funny. That's funny. I
I
used
was it's amazing. Like that lady was just amazing in terms of what she did, and what she showed me, that even when, you think that you don't have enough, you still can really try to figure it
Mm.
out and be innovative just to make something work, and just to make, say, make lemonade out of the lemons that you have.
was
Yeah.
the David Goggins of mums. I, I
Yeah.
was brought, I was brought up in. I grew up in West London. I had a lot of
Yeah,
Jamaican friends, and I could tell you they were all terrified of their mums, even the tough guys. Right? Their mums would whoop them hard. What's his
true.
woman said to me? He said Nigerian and Jamaican mums make Jewish mums look like crack hoes.
Jeez.
It's true. It's, yeah, they will drive that fear in you, and also
Yeah,
show you the way in terms of the
yeah.
path. It's true.
Now look, your journey wasn't just that though, right? You broke into like that working class guy breaks into university, but you
Yes.
wind up going to the UK doing another degree.
Yeah.
Then you wind up in
Yes.
America. I mean, this is quite the journey.
Yeah, this is, so that's, it's funny. And it was actually following my mother's path, because she got a job and it came in Ireland and went to the UK.
Mm.
Um, And when I finished Trinidad, when I finished my civil engineering degree in Trinidad, I remember my my professor actually said to me, I remember he was, he was traveling, well, at the end of my exams, and he said to me, "Hey, whatever you're doing, please don't leave without having a sit down with me." Professor Harry O. Phelps, I can't forget that man was just a mentor. And he said to me, "Whatever you're doing, I would love for you to do your master's and your PhD in London." That he did that path. And what he said to me also was he said, "But what I don't want you to do is to get married before you do all of that." It was just
Oh,
like, he's like,
yeah.
I'm like,
That's good advice.
yeah. And he was saying, because he actually did that. And I remember he said, "I actually got married, got through to go to Imperial College, traveled to London with my wife and kids in tow. And at the time I was applying for my chartered. And at that time you have to write, and everything, is written." And he has his own book that he told me he lost it literally because of all the confusion. He lost it actually in a taxi going to the house that that he had to do it completely over. And he was just like, it was
Oh
just
my
such
God. Yeah,
a
yeah.
challenge. And, so we had this deep, really conversation, and immediately, that put things into thoughts like, you know what? Maybe I should go to London. I didn't have a job there. My mom was there at the time. I could stay, with her, her sister was living there. So it was not something that was well planned, but it was something that I thought that, you know what, it's a way to really honor, someone who, my professor, who see something in me in terms of, to elevate me much more. And he said, the reason why I'm telling you this because and he'd always treat me special. Like, for some reason, he said, because I see myself in you. And that's something that was, that resonated. I remember he wrote a reference to me, and it was like, it was to go to Imperial. I wanted to go to University College of London, to do my master's. And at the time I didn't, one of them, he sent me, one that was open, and I read it, and it was just like so profound. I'm like floored that, that this man thinks, that of you. And, so that was my path to London. I went there, didn't have a job. I had went there, applied for several positions. I could tell you, I remember writing about 100 application letters. At that time, that's what you were doing. You write application letters, and I got rejected about 98 times. I used to get letters of rejection letters. And I got 2 letters that saying, "Hey, you can come for an interview." One of them was a research position that they said, "Okay, you work for free." And I'm like, that was an option. I'm like, that's not an option at this point. And the other one was, the other one was with the Care Group. The Care Group was a contracting company there. And I went for an interview. I remember I was working at a magazine company where I was working like £6 an hour at that time, doing customer service, but I loved the job because I was, customer facing and talking to folks, and people are cursing me for their magazine because it wasn't delivered, all sort of stuff and everything. So it's just like an engineer in that field was kind of crazy. But I went to this interview, and this is what actually spurred a lot of, thoughts in my mind. When I started the interview, the guy said to me, it was actually a black guy, African American guy, and I'm like, whoa! I'm thinking, good, like this guy's gonna favor me, and give me the opportunity. He said to me, "Mr. Hamilton, I'm going to tell you the reason why you're not suited for this position." And I'm like, what? Way to open the interview. I'm like, this is, to me, it was just like, what? And so I thought to myself, oh, maybe this is a challenge. Maybe this is, something that he's just trying to. So then I start laying out in terms of, what I've done with respect to my, my degree, how I, graduated, top of my class, and, how, I do other work in terms of construction, and this is construction. I used to do labor work. I used to work on site. Those are some of the stuff that I do for my holiday jobs. And, so I went through all this spiel, like, talking about how, I'm willing to learn. I'm, it's something that that I'm resilient, that, I'm not, afraid to try different stuff. I gave him a whole lot of stuff, and I felt great with myself. Like, I think that's a good answer. And then he said to me, oh, you really don't have the experience. And we're looking for someone like with 2 or 3 years experience in the field. And I'm like, but you look at my resume, I never had that experience anyway. Like,
Yeah.
what
The
did
chicken
you
and
like?
egg, right?
Yeah, it's just like, so I said, but I'm willing to learn. And he said to me also, well, you don't have a degree that's recognized in the UK. And I'm like, that's not true. Said the University of the West End is accredited by the University College of London. So, but he said you don't have a degree from the UK. So I'm like, okay, well, that's something that's, maybe I have to get, but I don't have it. But I can guarantee you, the education is equivalent. So that didn't work out. I didn't get a job. So that's where, that's my introduction to even my first, type of, first world global experience to an interview with a reputable company. So, but what I did after that, I realized that, okay, I was a little bit behind because I came in October when most of the recruiters already recruit folks. So so I didn't take it as as a big dent in that. I was never going to get a job. But for the rest of the year, I worked for the magazine company. I did that for maybe like 8 months, and I was working for a contractor who was doing renovation for houses and stuff as a supervisor. So got little experience. And then when I was doing that, I actually was reading the Evening Standard one day from work, and Adam, the Evening the Evening Standard still there.
Still the classic
And there was
ones, right?
there was a position open for environmental engineer. It was not even a building service engineer, environmental engineer. Tucker's Constance, 49 Lafayette Street, right next to the Tower of London. And I applied for the position and was called in for an interview. Barry Shamber, great guy, and did the interview. Barry offered me the job on the spot. And he said to me, what type of salary are you looking for? And I'm like,
Big one.
I don't even care. I'm like, to be honest,
The last offer was 0. So whatever you.
so like, it's funny. Like I said, whatever. And he said, I start you with £8 an hour. And that time was small with a guy with a degree. But I'm like, to me, I just wanted to get on the ladder. I always tell people, like for me, is to get on the ladder, like, not the ladder that you want to get on, that is. And that's something I always push in my career, And what I did, I remember walking out and the secretary said to me, hey, why did you accept £8 an hour? The job says that it's between 12 and 15. And I'm like, I'm okay with £8 an hour. Believe me. And what I did, in 2 months, I was up. He raised my he doubled my hourly rate because I was betting on myself. I know what I can do.
Yeah, good for you.
And one of the things he told me, I remember sitting down, and he didn't have anywhere to even sit. It was a small office. He had his own private office, and then everybody else was sitting like cubicle, and there was no space for me. He was out most of the time, so he said you could just sit in my office. So I was sitting in his office. So
you studied as a civil engineer, which we politely call concrete farming, and then you go into the building services, right? So
yes.
did you feel
I tell you that
you should have stayed with civil, or did you?
So I tell you that transition. So Barry said to me, because at the time they were doing a lot of HVAC, MEP work, sprinkler design, lighting, data centers. They were doing a whole lot of projects. And I was saying to Barry, I'm like, Barry, I did civil engineering, man. I thought that this was the environmental engineering stuff that I'm doing. And he's like, well, we were planning to get into that, but most of the work that we're doing now is a lot of HVAC, MEP, and building services. So, he said to me, hey, listen, if you're engineer, you're engineer.
Yeah.
Which is just like, wow, that was so powerful. And what he did, he set out and like that guy never had a degree, didn't even get licensed, owned the firm, but one of the smartest person that I know in the industry. Yeah. And and he basically taught me everything from, from scratch, and showed me, different ideas, and really, got me into building services. And then I'm like, okay, at the time, I looked up CIBSE at the time, Chartered Institute of Business, Building Engineers, got connected with Tim Dwyer, who was the head at the time. And yeah, and then, decided that, what, man, maybe I should just do a master's at South Bank, because South Bank is so closely connected to CIBSE. And this is this is the the field that I think I'm feeling comfortable in. And my boss actually said to me, hey, if you want to do it and do your master's in it, I'll pay for it. So that was, a cherry on, on the top for me. So that's how I actually switched. And to be honest, I think it was the best thing that have ever happened to me. To be honest, I really don't. I think it's much suited to, for me, in terms of what I'm doing now, in terms of design. I got into healthcare, which is my passion. So it's just, sometimes it says, it's really, sometimes you're navigating in the path that you don't expect, but it's just the path that I think that was set up for me, and somehow that's the reason I'm. But doing civil engineering also gave me that first principle of problem solving, also that helped me, throughout my career, and helped my understanding as well. To diversify my understanding of the full, spectrum of engineering, that helped me a lot in project management and all the other stuff that I do now.
The Edifice Complex will continue in just a moment.
Are you struggling with paperwork, spreadsheet overload, and project management? Then Blue Rhythm is the solution to help you. Streamline your commissioning and project management process. Go paperless, increase efficiency, and save money. Blue Rhythm is commissioning and project management software by practitioners for practitioners, adapting to your workflows and processes, and doing things your way. Blue Rhythm provides painless and fast onboarding by bringing your existing workflows, forms, checklists, and issues logs into Blue Rhythm for you. You can use their pre-built templates to customize your commissioning workflows. And Blue Rhythm can fully handle the transition from your current software platform. Blue Rhythm is secure, scalable, and reliable, backed by amazing support, and accessible 24/7 on any Windows, iOS, or Android device. Why are you still using paper and hard-to-control spreadsheets? Start your free Blue Rhythm account today at bluerhythm.com.
And now, back to the show.
You're like the unicorn. You have construction experience, you got a civil degree, you got a master's degree, and you've rounded out what Adam and I call like one of the ideal careers, really.
Well, you think
hands-on experience with academics, it doesn't get much better than that. With management, right?
Building services engineering, MEP for you North Americans out there, right, is it's an applied engineering, right? And the people that are sort of more oriented to hands-on, like visual, this is the perfect spot, right? If you're the nerd who loves doing calculations, it's not really the place for you, right?
No.
If you're the guy who likes to see what you design and go and fiddle with it and set it up, it is the best place to be. But look, your carbon footprint is not complete yet. So we've gone from Jamaica to London.
Yeah.
How did you wind up in the States?
All right. So dabbling around, like I actually work in telecoms. After leaving Tucker's, I headhunted and worked for a company called Lever 3 Communication. At that time, Lever 3 was way ahead of its time. They were their competitors at that time was WorldCom. And they were building a whole European and transatlantic network in fiber. They were layering fiber in the ground, like everywhere. Building, and they were doing it in, they were a Denver-based company that built their network in the US and expanded it into Europe. I worked with them for 3 years. A fascinating job. I was on the client side. They basically put me on a plane, 3-4 times a week, and I'm everywhere. And everywhere, and really learning, from the fire hose, and really kind of, owning, the client side and understanding the needs and requirements, looking at, managing the design guides. It really helped me to have a different purview of work, because understanding the owner side and as a consultant that help you to really navigate the space much more easier. So at the time, after leaving Lever 3, it wasn't voluntary. The market fell out completely. And they basically laid off most of the engineering department. And at the time, they basically I went on to work for Orchid at the time, right, literally 2 weeks after they laid me off, because I was doing some work with them. Never, spent about a year and a half at Orchid, and then I went to Holy and Kirkwood, a Scottish headquarter firm that was doing a lot of healthcare projects. I was actually working in their London office, playing around one day, and said, "Let me put my resume on my CV on Monster.com."
Because
Really?
still around?
Yeah, and I'm like, Monster was doing a lot of stuff. Put it on Monster. I'm looking to work in the U.S. because I used to travel here, travel to the U.S. quite a lot. I have friends, so they asked me what area. So I have some friends that was going to Howard University. I had some friends in Virginia and DC, and I said DC, Virginia. So I selected the area. Not even 3 hours after I put it up, I got a message.
Wow.
Yeah, I got a message, and they said, "Hey, we like your resume, and if you're interested, we would like to talk to you." And I'm like, "Okay." So I'm thinking they're going to talk to me on the phone. They're like, "No, we would love for you to actually come to the U.S. and interview." And I'm like, and they're like, "We'll pay for your trip. We'll pay your hotel. For a week." And I'm like, "Well, it's the least I'm getting out of that is a vacation." And my friends were there anyway. So it's just like, so that's how I actually, I flew here, did an interview, got the job on the spot. Was gotten an offer, and they said they were going to look at sort of my work permit, and I basically went back, work and wait until basically I got the approval, and then I moved to the U.S. It's not something that it's always some of the spur of the moment, also the stuff that I don't understand, but it's whatever. It's a divine. And that's what it is. I came to a firm called Esri Klingman, a small firm. Well, small in the sense it was 60 engineers, but doing a lot of healthcare work again, assisted living. And that's how I really got thrown into to manage multiple projects, because it was like every week we're putting out, a different design for Sunrise Senior Living. At the time, I was working with University of Virginia Hospital system at the same time. So really getting a full ride of what it is in terms of engineering. But I should tell you, I realized something that was almost a setback, and I realized most of the the units was different. Most of my rule of thumb and everything was very different, and I'm like, man, it took me a little while, because I couldn't conceive and actually see what I'm doing. And the size and what the scale and stuff and everything was no judgment. It was all confusing, and silently I was like struggling with all of this and stuff. And I remember, like, about a year after, my boss came to me and said, "You are not progressing as fast as I think you should be," which is also the fact that, the units are kind of giving me a little problem. And he said to me, what I'm going to do, like, I'm going to, for now, I'm going to cut your salary, by $10,000 until you catch up. And I'm like, oh man, that was, to be honest, and like for me, that was a kind of a low point. It's just like, man, what am I not good enough? Like, man, I don't, it was just like, wow, am I not smart enough to catch up? Or, but I didn't know that there was this, this thing. So I threw everything into it. I basically, start, doing some reading all the textbooks and looking at the units and trying to figure out how, to really push, my experience much further. And in about 6 to 8 months, to be honest, I felt that I was there. I was kind of the go-to person for a lot of the, the production, for Sunrise. But spent 2.5 years at the firm, and in 2.5 years, my salary gradually came back to where it was. So I didn't even get a raise; it came back to where it was. And but I was kind of fighting because I was saying, hey, now I'm fully fledged, like I'm doing all the stuff. I'm traveling, managing CEO process and doing a lot more stuff. And but one of the things that I also thought, like I was getting so inspired by healthcare projects and what it does and what it stands for and how it can actually improve communities. And that's something that I said, hey man, this is something that I want to do maybe on a bigger scale. And that's when I reach out to one of my headhunter, a headhunter that I didn't know, just happened to find Design Force. And Amit said to me, hey, I can get you into a big firm that does healthcare, and then you could do healthcare work. And he set up 3 interviews for me. I went to the first one with Smith Group. I was there for about 2 hours. When I walked out, I had an offer in my hand, printed, with a salary with about $20,000 more than what I was working on.
Oh yeah.
I called my headhunter and said to me, hey, he said, how did it go? He called me after this. How did it go? I said, it went well. He said, what happened? I said, they made me an offer. I have an offer in my hand. And he's like, you must be kidding me. He's like, it's like, yeah, I got it printed out in my hand. And he's like, oh my God, this has never happened. So he's like, that's where, and the other 2 interviews, I didn't even bother to go. One was with URS, and the other.
Funny else, sperms coming up here.
I know. So this is the AECOM now, because AECOM bought them.
Yeah.
The thing about it is that I found the firm that I think that I want to work for. So immediately started with them. Went extremely well, and there was always setbacks in the way. I was there was some little setback in terms of my boss, who was the director of engineering. He got let go. Ooh. And he was like, he was like, I was his protege. He had, he called me, it's like he called himself the good, the bad cop and the good cop. That's how we worked on projects. And he was teaching me everything about healthcare. The guy was just like amazing. Still a great friend of mine, just, lucky to have somebody like that working for. In about a year and a half, he was let go. And, one of the things that, everybody thought I was going to go with him, the whole company. And I remember, the leader came to me and said, hey, I know it's tough. I know, that's your mentor. And, but I think it's an opportunity as well, for you, which I didn't even think of it in that way. And I'm like, wow, so immediately I took over all the projects that he was doing. And we're doing a project in Mississippi, a full replacement, brand new hospital in Mississippi. I took over the whole design for that hospital. And that changed my career. Yeah. I worked with the Detroit office. It was leading a massive project. It's, for that size, fully replacement hospital, and really cut my teeth on really doing some great work. And it was recognized by Smith Group. I escalated, my career just shot up. I was made associate the year after, and then a year after was made a partner. So, which was, tremendous. And one of the things that my boss, Esri Klingman, told me, he said, you're an engineer, and that firm is a big A, small E firm. And you're not going to be a project manager there. That's and a principal, it's tough because engineers don't usually, do well in those type of environment. Like he said that to me, and I'm like, and I'm like, wow, but his wife was actually working for Smith Group. So it's kind of weird. So when he said that, but I, in 4 years, I was a partner, which was just like, so 6 years into working in the US, I became a partner. And one of the things that was striking, I tell you, there was a guy that was, African-American guy, black guy, came to me after that was, I made partner, and said to me, can I speak to you for a second? I said, yeah, sure. And he brought me in a room and he said, do you know what you just achieved? And I said, what? And he said, Do you know you are actually the first Black partner in our DC office, and we've been around for like 50 something years. And I'm like, wow, I didn't know that.
Now you
You
should
know,
say,
so
look, he took a boy from the Caribbean, bitch, to get this done, right?
yeah,
Yeah.
he's from the Caribbean as well. He's from Trinidad. But it's funny, like I didn't realize that. And you know, to be honest, that was for me, it was a great moment in my career, but it really kind of opened my eyes because diversity and equity and all those stuff is never something that I think a whole lot about. I think about if you work hard, if you do what you're supposed to do, you double down, you know, you put in all the effort, you know, you will get rewarded. That's how my
Absolutely
mindset.
right.
You know, so that's exactly how I see it. But one of the things that I try to do in doing that also is saying, you know, using myself as an example, because I'm saying, hey, you know, it can be done, and showing people, you know, in the industry also that looks like me that, hey, you know, it really can be done, but you just have to have the right attitude. You have to put in the right work, and you just have to just do the legwork because it's there if you want it. And if you hold on to it, you know, tight enough, you know, you will get it. And that's something that I'm passionate about, something that I continue to try to, you know, talk about in my books and talk about in most of my talks and narrative and my mentorship, you know, with industry folks. It's just really just to say, hey, man, listen, in this industry, if you work hard, and if you really give it your all, you're really going to get
Absolutely
what you
right.
Yeah, totally.
I'll click on a few things there. Are you an American now then? Are you taking
I am.
the oath?
I am.
Right? Okay, good
Yeah,
for you, mate.
yeah,
Look,
yeah.
I want to talk about quickly hospitals. So I did a lot of, I've been lucky. This isn't a brag. This is just the inability to say, no, I've worked in 21 countries so far. And
Oh,
yeah, I'm a whore. That's just, right. But
wow.
hospitals are my favorite jobs because they're difficult. You can't
Yes.
half-ass it, right? You have to pay
Yes.
attention, right?
Yes.
But the
Yes.
UK versus the North America, I work a lot in the Middle East, and there's this whole clash of engineering cultures between like European, mostly UK versus America. So like I do a lot of work with Cleveland Clinic in Abu Dhabi. It's American stuff,
Yes.
right? And everyone who works
Yes.
on there comes from a British background. It's fascinating. But you get the whole, in the UK, you got the HTMs and they had solving for infection control and things like that.
Yes.
When I have the
Yes.
infection control conversation on an American job, I get like crickets. You know, like, what? Then I want to do a pressure regime diagram. And
Yeah.
we don't do that here, was what someone said to me. It's like, what's going on? So what was your experience? Because you've come from so look, the reason you did well, by the way, you have a building services background. That is a freaking
Yes.
superpower in North America.
It is. It is. It is.
Sorry,
And people
Robert.
don't ask. That's a differentiator to me. And a lot
Yeah.
of people don't understand because not only that, I understand, like I could do light and design, I could do sprinkler, I could do, name it. It's building services. That's what it's called. You do everything. You know, you get exposed to everything. So it was kind of, you know, but you're right. One of the things that, and I brought a lot of those designs, type of, you know, standard into my work and into my, you know, into my practice, you know, doing, you know, airflow diagrams and doing pressurization diagrams. That's something that I even brought here because I did it in the UK. So I think, you know, to be honest, with respect to, I think at this point it's closer because of globalization in terms of how we do things. But you know, back in the days when we used to do it, it never used to be. I'm like, I used to wonder, why are you not doing a risk assessment as part of your design? Like, you know, construction, like we don't do it here. What? This is not even design. It's just like, but it's very, you know, it's different and people don't actually know that until you come and actually see that, you know. But it's, you know, and you know, it's funny. Cleveland Clinic, I do a lot of work for Cleveland Clinic, local and in both Miami and in Cleveland as well.
Look, I heard when I lived in America and worked there, I did JFK Terminal 4 for Arrow, and I heard we don't do that here so many goddamn times. It's like, we just don't do that here, son.
Yeah,
They
yeah,
called
yeah.
me Lalimi because I was like obstreperous, but I want to do it. No, we're not.
Yeah. So, you know, this, you know, but even navigating, and just continuing, you know, my path, you know, I left Summit Group and, you know, WSP headhunted me, and it wasn't something that I was looking for, but the reason why I made that that call and actually went to WSP is that I was actually, meeting up on a brick wall again with the AE types of environment, and I was growing exponentially. I was a thought leader. I was speaking at many conferences. Was doing a whole lot of stuff, and I wanted, to elevate engineering as a whole much more than sitting below architect. And I wanted to have my own type of my own type of path with respect to healthcare engineering and raising it to the high level. That was my goal. And going to WSP actually gave me the opportunity because they wanted to push healthcare. They just bought CCRD, which is a 250 healthcare firm, and they want me to be 100% involved in healthcare. At the time, the DC market was low. They were doing $500,000-$600,000. They were doing a lot. In Texas, they were doing well. In Richmond, they're doing well. Denver, they're doing well. And they said to me, "Hey, this is your goal. You're required to in 3 years, do $1.5 million as the goal, for healthcare in the region."
Yeah.
What happened is that I said, okay, I don't know how I was going to do it, but what I realized is that I had a lot of advocates because a lot of the architects that worked at Smith Group are at HKS. They're at, HDR. They're doing, their RTKL. They're all the companies that they cut their teeth and they used to work for me. I worked with them, work alongside them, and they have great respect for me in terms of how I looked at engineering. I always one of those folks that I'm not somebody that go in and say, "Hey, this is how it should be done always." I'm always innovative. I'm always saying, "Hey, maybe let's think about it. Let's figure a way how we can actually work together with architects and planners." And I try to learn their side. I sit down with the planners, understand their mind, their thought process. I sit down, with the architects, figuring out, some of their needs and wants, and really just trying to figure out how my engineering solution is going to marry with their, making sure that I'm keeping, the principles and standards and at the core of what I do, but also making sure that I'm not inflexible and we can be more collaborative during design. And that's something that I'm known for. And most of these architects that I've worked with, they know this about me. So even, with me not even going out and selling engineering alone, I have these advocates in all these firms that want to work with me. So when I went to WSP, I realized that I didn't even have to sell so much myself. Like I have people who wants to work with me, and I'm going to these architects and stuff and everything, and I'm winning work and getting work and I'm like, wow, this opened up a complete different, type of, marketing stream for me. And this was just amazing. And what I was doing with Ashley on the national level, I volunteered. I was meeting with all the facility folks. I'm sitting, next to them, shoulder to shoulders. I'm presenting with them, and these became my clients as well. So it's really just navigating the industry in a way that a lot of people, to be honest, my boss always said to me, "You're doing something that we didn't really understand that we want to do, but you dedicated your time to thought leadership, to being out there, to being an advocate in the industry that people, want to see, want to work with you." And these are all the stuff that I talk about in my book, From Grit to Glory. It's really trying to create a swim stream for me that wasn't there, but also, based on who I am as a person. I'm a person that, if, how I impact people. Empathy is an important part of how I drive my life. I want to make sure that if I promise you that I'm going to do something, I'm going to get it done. So that's my integrity as well in terms of extremely strong. If I promise a client that I'm going to deliver something to you, believe it or not, even if I'm not delivering it myself, I'm going to make sure that my team is doing it, and I'm going to be on them. I'm going to figure it out. And if there's a problem, I'm the person that you call, and that's how I actually lead all my clients. And all my clients have a direct connections to me. If you call, I will answer. If I'm busy, I will answer you. I will respond. Mm-hmm. So those are some of the stuff that I'm actually mentoring a lot of my staff know about, because that's what people want. And that's what service is about, as well. it's really be about, being a man of your word and really being, somebody that people can depend on, because we're in an industry that, that not many people are like that, to be honest. Sometimes I get extremely upset. It's just like, why didn't you return this call? Like they're messaging you that makes, we know we have all stuff to do. We have baseball, we have football, but fully understand. But what I'm saying is that, we have a lot of stuff to do, and we understand. But at the core of what we do is our patients. The core of what we do is taking care of communities, and in doing that, your work is extremely important. So that's the reason why I value, so much, making sure that I treat people the way I want to be treated. And it goes all the way back, and it goes all the way back to my upbringing, and something that I didn't mention, and it's my connection to healthcare is from I was 18 years old. I had a bike accident, and I talk about it in my book. I had a bike accident, and my kneecap was split in two.
Yikes!
I went into the hospital, and they sent me home in Jamaica. They sent me home because they didn't have an X-ray to look at my wound to see how bad it was. They put me on a piece of board and put a bandage around it and send me home for me to go to the adjoining city the next day to do a X-ray. It was lucky that I had an aunt who works at the University Hospital in Kingston said, "Hey, no, it's bad. You need to get him up there right now." And I didn't even go in an ambulance. I took a public transportation bus to take me to there. Had a surgery, immediately went immediately straight into surgery. It was repaired. I was sent home 2 days after, thinking that we're fine. Infection set in. I was back into the hospital the next day. Yeah. I spent 3 months in the hospital. Oof. So whether it's bad infection control,
my gosh,
whether it's it's poor air systems or airflow changes within that operating room, that became my passion in life, because I went to Trinidad late to do my engineering because I was still in the hospital. So I know what not having a good healthcare system looks like. And that's something that became my passion, because I'm like, wow, this is just like so divine. It's like I just end up, working and designing healthcare facilities, and look what I was exposed to. I remember coming out of the hospital 3 months. I'm like, maybe I should be a doctor.
Wow, it's like somebody hit you with the magic wand, and that was created by Vitruvius and Florence Nightingale and Douglas Galton.
It was
three dead people that had. Yeah, it was wow.
Yeah, that's been my ride, and doing it and growing. It's funny, I grew healthcare. That $1.5 million was about $5 million in 2.5 years in WSP. And I remember I was selling so much work that they said to me, and I tell you the truth, anybody else that was there with me, Sean Yu and Gontelli and Brian Carroll, who still leaves the office, they said to me, "Hey, Gary, can you actually stop sell for now?"
Calm down. Let's catch up.
Listen, that thing you were saying about the hospital, people think they understand what austerity is. They don't. What you experienced was austerity. When I was going in and out of Athens with work during the financial crisis, austerity is you go to the pharmacy and your drugs aren't there because they can't afford to bring them to the country. That's real austerity, right? Mm-hmm. People have no goddamn idea. Let's double click on your book. So, look, I'm pretty sure you didn't wake up in the morning and someone said, "You know what we need from you, Gary? You need a book called Grit or Glory." So,
yes,
I wrote a book because I'm a narcissist, malignant narcissist, like that, right? So, tell me more. Why the book?
So, so as I said, I realized that there was not a lot of people who traverse my path, who have some form of guide and roadmap to do it. Not only people, from the ghetto, people who are traveling, who are trying to rise in the industry as well. So this book really talks about that. It really talks about innovative ideas. It really talks about, what are the stuff that you culture when you're young, growing up, What are the stuff that you encounter that will really build you build your entrepreneurial spirit and what you're trying to do, and try to identify those and use those as tools, to really build you up for your next step. And that's what the book talks about. It really talks about how do you rise, in corporate America. And it doesn't matter if it's engineering or healthcare, but I'm telling it from an engineering perspective, because it's from a perspective where we're not the folks that are usually seen. They only call us when they have problems, and when there are issues, all this, we're not the pretty stuff that they want to see. You should hide all your stuff. You should, so
yeah. In that small little room in the corner.
In Downton Abbey, mate, we're the butlers and the underservants, right?
Yeah. But we are the person that if they're uncomfortable, we are the person that that they're best friends. And during the COVID 19 pandemic, your mechanical engineer was one of your best friends also. So it shows us the importance. It really just navigates the industry and talks about where you can build your career, whether it's through thought leadership, whether it's through my first customer service job. People are saying, hey, you're a unicorn in terms of what you do. What you do is not normal. You're outspoken. You do speeches. All this stuff and everything. It's all the buildup of the stuff that I've learned. Yeah. I worked at a magazine company called Johnston of London, in which people were shouting at me in the morning. You didn't deliver my Vogue magazine. I ordered 15. You didn't. And it was, and it was just like, I couldn't believe that people could shout at people that much. And I learned to deal with these folks in such a calm demeanor that even my boss was saying, how is it that you maintain your calm like in all of this? But
you haven't met my mom.
Give me a
about that. I'm telling you that. I tell him always. If you think about all the great boxers from the UK, Frank Bruno, Lennox Lewis, also they have really imposing mom that they.
Yeah. Frank Bruno's mum. I bet she whooped him hard with that. You're right.
Yeah. So. But it's really just really talking about that. It's really, and what I did with this book as well, I have illustrations in the different chapters, just walking through, these are the steps and these are the stuff that you have to remember and don't forget if you're navigating this industry. These are some nuggets that you absolutely have to hold on to, and making sure that these are the part of your toolkit, to rise. But it's also about empowerment. It's about not because, you're working for a company, that doesn't mean you can't be entrepreneurial as well. And that's something that people forget. They're like, oh yeah, you can't be, you could absolutely be it. And if it's, some companies really encourage you to do that as well. So those are some of the stuff that, and even what you're doing in itself, how are you going to lift yourself in terms of your career? What's innovative ideas and stuff that you can do that could set you apart? Because that's entrepreneurial in itself. I remember, I talk about it in my book. I chased the Cedar Hill Regional Medical Center project in Washington, D.C., which was a project in an underserved area on Anacostia. They have an existing hospital that half closed. They have lack of access. There was no neonatal care unit. There was no LDR, labor and delivery. They have, it was bad, not in the greatest condition. The city wanted a hospital and applied for a hospital. Ages couldn't fund it. The pandemic showed that part of the community how bad the healthcare is, because most of the folks that got affected were from that community. They died. It's not about they went in the hospital. They die, and because they of the comorbidities, because of the lack of access, because of whatever it is, and it shows when you do the study, and I did some of the study in it to say that the life expectancy is 19 years different from the Georgetown in that area. So it's really something that really affected me a whole lot. And I said to myself, hey, how can I be a part of this? So it's more than actually me being an engineer. How can I be an advocate? And, and that's something that my DTR Foundation talks about. And that's why, my book is 100% donated to that organization, DTR Foundation, which is a 501c3 organization.
Right.
I went into the community. I talked to the folks and stuff. I went to community, meetings and stuff. I forged a connection with the DC government through, actually, we had a lobbyist at the time for WSP who have all the connections, and he basically gave me all the connections with the mayor's office and everybody. And I'm talking about what we need to do for this hospital, and at the time you're still wearing a WSP hat. But I wanted to be a part of this. I wanted to be designing something that I know that's going to serve this community and it's going to change life, for people who look like me. And that's something that was so passionate. I wrote about it because for me, it doesn't matter. I won the $6 million IU Health project, but nothing was as grand as actually me winning this project for WSP and showing and being a part of a project that's going to be this important, that's going to change the life of so many people that need it. And I did all sort of creative measures. I remember when the RFP came out, it was a lot of architects actually, they called me. Everybody, like, I want Gary on my team. I want Gary's team, because they saw me in the community.
Yeah.
I was even, some of the interviews, that's out there with community relations folks. I'm doing it, and I'm doing some of these on my own time. I'm going in these communities and spending time in the community on my own time. It's not, because WSP tells me to do that. I was doing it because it's something that I wanted to do. We won the project, delivered the project was just open and stuff. I left, before it was open, but that's one of my I think one of my greatest achievement in creating a new way to win projects, and really elevating engineer to the highest, and really just trying to figure out how can we be a beacon of light, for the industry, and help, health equity, and really try to make sure that healthcare is available to the people, that needs it, and that it's not something, it's not a right. It's just something that people should know. And that's, maybe that's the difference between me and many other folks and stuff and everything. The passion that drives me is really to serve and to help. And wherever I can do that in industry.
You're the third, Gary, you're the third dimension. You are like
the triple threat.
Yeah, like everybody.
He can dance, he can act.
Yeah, I mean, people start out in one dimension, you get into the second dimension, but you've put the human touch onto your career that's in a dimension that most people don't. I mean, we've had a lot of really good guests on the show for sure, and like I remember Sarah, and she was talking about her volunteer work. A lot of people that do a lot of good volunteer work, but those individuals like yourself, like, it's not just about the job. I mean, that's fun and it's exciting, and all the things that you've talked about. But when you embrace and own the reason for it, the ethos of what healthcare is all about, that's a completely different individual. And
what you've done is a couple of things here. One, what you've identified without knowing it, it's not about left or right, Republican or Democrat. It's about up or down. Who has shit and who doesn't have shit, right? That's what actually matters in life.
Yeah.
And the way you've captured that and been the go-to guy for the architects is you become a brand in your own right. You understand that, right?
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Right. It's in the book. It's in the book. I talk about it, how you create a brand, and I did. You're right.
Yeah. That's now look, you're a young man. Now I'm old. Everyone's young to me, right? But you're younger than us. So, you're not in your final act here. What else is in front of you? What other things are you going to climb here? I mean,
it's funny. So my same my recruiter, he's more of an executive consultant now for Design Force. He called me. He got, I think he was one of the first person who got a copy of the book, and he said to me, "Hey, call me at 7:00 in the morning." I'm like, "Why is he calling me? Like, I'm not moving from Introba."
I've just landed, leave me alone.
It's just like 7:00. And he called me and he said, "Man," and he sounded extremely tired. And he said, "Man, Gary, man, I got to tell you this." And he said, "Man, I got your book yesterday in the office. And my intention wasn't to start read, but I opened the book and I started reading, and it held me back, until like late in the night. I went home, I took a shower, I ate, and I went and I sat down and read the book until 4 o'clock in the morning. He said I read it on one go, and he said to me, "Man, listen, man, you're just getting started." He said, "What you are is I don't understand and question it, but what you do, and this book is absolutely amazing." He's like, your life, he's like, your story is just being written. And, he was talking about a similarity between, his upbringing and mine. And, because we didn't really talk about this, but it's really something that he said, maybe that's the reason why we're this close. That's the reason why, we click. And, to be honest, like for me, I turned 50 this year.
Right.
Right. I turned 50 this year, and how I feel that I'm moving into a new gear. That's how I feel. I feel that there's a whole lot of stuff that I want to do, and I'm going to do. I'm going to do much more stuff, more work with my nonprofit. To be honest, that's something that I'm passionate about, and it's about mentorship a lot. And it's not only mentorship, to younger folks, but mentorship to people in the industry, just to understand how to navigate. And I'm doing it as an Introba. That's something that most of the sector leaders reports to me. But every time I meet them and I have meetings with them and stuff and everything, one of the guys said to one of the CEO, "Hey man, I wish I had met Gary like 3 years ago. My career would be so much further." But it's really about doing what I think my passion is. It's really lifting people. And whatever it is that my next step is, it's really to continue to do that, and that's I'm extremely excited about it. I feel that it's just going to be great. Like I'm always a guy who accepts fate over fear. So I just feel that that there's so much stuff that's going to be happening. I never thought about even a second book, but maybe a third one. I don't know. But,
I want to take a moment here, Gary, to talk about mentorship.
Yeah.
I don't know where we're at here on our time, but we can keep going. One of the things that happens to an individual like yourself, and I know what happens to Adam, it's certainly happened to me, when you get to a place in your career where the people that you mentored over your lifetime come back to you, and maybe they're going through a career change. And this happened to me actually yesterday. Somebody that I started mentoring almost 15 years ago is going through a career change. And they call you up and they say, "Listen, Robert, I wanted to have this conversation with you before you heard it on the street." Right? And then they share with you, what they're doing, why they're doing it, and the gratitude that they return through their words for you being part of their life and career.
Yeah.
It is one of the most rewarding things that will happen to anybody that takes on that responsibility of mentoring others. Yeah. It's great when it happens, but when there's a change and you're towards the end of your career and these people call you and they say thank you. There's no better reward. Right.
So maybe that's the dopamine that I've been getting, because to be honest, that I've been doing that in most of my career. And to be honest, that is the most rewarding thing that could ever happen to me.
Yeah.
Like me setting up somebody for opportunity. I have, and most of the folks that I've mentored and trained are still my good friends. They still call me. And you know what it is also, which is sometimes I'm quite surprised. Even industry peers who are clients, or actually, I remember, great client, gave me a lot of work. A guy who was even older than me called me and said, "Hey, Gary, I just, I have, a decision to make, and I just need to, to pick your brain and just ask you your opinion." And I'm like, to myself, me?
You're part of his internal cabinet, right? The cabinet of elders.
Yeah, yeah.
And I could give him something to take away, and he would come back and said, "Man, thank you. Like, you helped me to make my decision." And I'm like, oh my God. So these are, you, Robert, you're absolutely right. I think those are the stuff that I think are rewarding, that you can impact someone. They always say, man, people, if you can, walk away and know that you have impacted life and you make someone's life better. I think that's something that I think that's a legacy that you will feel great about. And that's just how I look at it as well.
Yeah.
Also, you're looking for, I didn't have quite a journey you had, but I'm a council house boy from West London, right? So
Yeah. Yeah.
it's you're always it's not me. I got people who took an interest in me and gave me a break. That was everything, right?
Absolutely.
You can work yourself to death and be clever as hell. You still need those moments and those people that believe in you and give it a shot, right? That is the difference,
Absolutely.
I think.
Yeah.
And you're now that guy to them, right? That's the difference.
Absolutely.
You've gone from being the guy getting the break to probably the guy giving the break, right? It's like it's you don't get a memo one morning and say, hey, guess what? You're now the guy who gives the break. Flips around.
Yeah.
It does.
Yeah. So it's
very
funny.
true.
So I tell you, this is because I do mentorship, for kids. I got a message this morning, and this, just to, and so there's a little kid who's going to University of the West Indies in Jamaica who have no relation to me. If somebody just called me and said, hey, I would like for you to talk to this person 8 months ago, practically adopted him. He's like everything now. So he sent a message to me this morning. He said to me, morning, Mr. Hamilton, hope everything is solid. I wanted to update you on my progress. I secured a job as a manager to manage a startup food truck business. I begin training next week on the POS system and understanding recipes, etc. I also had my first shoot with the media company I told you about. We covered pool party, and the next Wednesday we'll go to St. Mary to shoot some real estate content. And I said, good morning. I said, I'm glad you're taking up some of the ideas that we spoke about. That's admirable. That's the spirit. And he said, yes, man, you're a blessing. I need to give your book a couple more reads. So far, I loved it. So much game and so much nuggets. So many lessons to learn from it all. Thank you.
Yeah.
Nice. That's a haiku, right?
Yeah.
That's, if I get these messages every day, my that's the thing. That's the feeling that will send you to the week, and that's what I'm going for. That's why I've written both Get the Youth's Bible and From Grit to Glory, because it's really about the lessons. If I can't speak to you personally, if I can reach you through my words and through my my narrative in the book, it's a way that I'm trying to change life.
Listen, mate, we're coming up on time now, so we're just going to do one of us. We will both go ask you a quick fire question, right?
Yes.
So this is going to be a hard one for you to answer. So I'm going to put you on the spot.
Yes.
Just when you look back on the total sum of everything you've experienced, what is the one thing you would advise a young person to do at 18?
To believe in yourself much more. To believe that, because I think that's something that initially that having faith that I could get there was one of my biggest challenge. So it's to believe, just to believe more. Because
that's what your mum did, right? You will believe. I will hit you with a shoe, right?
She did, and she helped me to do that. And to be honest, if I could go back, I would tell you that I wouldn't do anything different, because I think that's how that's the way, the reason I am today. It's all my amalgamation of everything that's put together that really build resilience in me. But it's really just that, because I think I was from the ghetto. I'm from, if you say the council house type of mentality. I was just always feeling that, hey, I don't think I'm able to achieve these stuff because I don't have this, or I don't have this. So those are some of the stuff that I think that I would do very different.
What I heard there is you suffered from imposter syndrome for a long time, right?
Yep.
Everyone. Yep. Trust me, if you're listening to this podcast, everybody has that. Even the great who are rock solid, everyone has those moments you think, oh, should I be here? When are they going to find out I shouldn't have this job, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a tough thing to get over, mate. You never get over.
Yeah.
I can tell you,
Yeah.
I'm 61, still suffering from that. Anyway,
Gary,
Robert,
oftentimes I ask our guests to, if they were addressing, a graduating class at a university, what the message would be. But I think in your case, I would like to know, rather than addressing the students, how would you address the parents of students who have kids in university in the STEM programs? What would you say to them in terms of advice that they can take and pass on to their kids? What would you say to the parents?
To be honest, the parent support is everything, especially for kids in university. My daughter actually last week Saturday just graduated from Howard University, and there's a lot of lessons that I think like for me, with my mom actually, her support and her belief helped me a whole lot. So that's where it's actually knowing that, regardless of what it is, that you have somebody in your corner, especially when you're doing something that's technical as STEM, it's going to be tough. And giving that support and creating that support system around them is something that I think it's invaluable and something that will help, any of those students, whether it's, you're doing the engineering field or whether you're doing, the medicine, it's something that having the support of your parents in a whole is going to be invaluable in doing, in helping you to be successful.
Absolutely. 100%.
Good words. Good words.
All right, man. So look, let's wrap her up there. Gary, thank you for coming on. Very inspirational story. Keep doing what you're doing, man, because, I believe there's not enough acknowledgement of engineering in general, and there's not enough role models for people. I hope my hope is anybody listening to this, there's an undergraduate or a newly graduated person looking for a role model. This is what this is about, right?
Yeah, totally.
So keep doing what you're doing, dude.
Thank you, man. Thank you.
Thanks, Gary.
Thank you very much, man.
Thank you.
The Edifice Complex will continue in just a moment.
Are you passionate about the built environment? Do you want to learn from the industry's most inspiring, intelligent, and accomplished professionals? Then the companion to this podcast, Wisdom of the Property Crowd, is just the book for you. From Edifice Complex podcast interviews, this book distills the critical thinking, insight, and ideas of some of the property industry's most accomplished and respected practitioners. Each chapter is a synopsis of an hour-plus interview, capturing the takeaways and insights, including diagrams and images to help explain concepts and ideas. There's also a brief bio about the interviewee and a QR code linked to the podcast episode for those that want to explore further. These are the mentors you wish you had in college. Wisdom of the Property Crowd by Adam Muggleton, available on Amazon worldwide.
And now, back to the show.
I get inspired by a lot of our guests, right? As you do, right? And but Gary brings there's something about him, right? That just, he's, like I said, he's like the unicorn. He's just got that third dimension that a lot of people
call it in acting. Like, it's a triple threat. He can sing, he can dance, he can act.
Yeah. Totally. Yeah. I love how he's like the human element of his story is unlike, it's we see a lot the great success stories where people like Gary, come from tough backgrounds and then to be where he is. And did he say his daughter just graduated from Harvard?
No, it was Howard, I thought it was.
Howard University?
Yeah, Howard's quite an esteemed university. I think it's near where they live, Howard. I wanted to ask, but I didn't want to make it public. I'm assuming she did engineering.
Yeah. But like his mom, like her grandma.
Yeah.
The change in the legacy, the change in the legacy of their family story changed because of his mom.
But when you mumble it, that's mama best. I knew a lot of tough, like, Jamaican people in West London, right? They were all terrified of their mums, every single one of them, right? Yeah. Nutters outside. As soon as they went home, their mum shouted at them. They sat down and did what she said, right? There's something about that Jamaican mum thing. It's a meme, but it's a truth. Yeah. It's a meme.
Even when I think of my own mom, I remember times there was 5 kids in our family. Yeah. We're all going to school at the same time, and she would before she went to work, because she worked at night, and but when we came home from school, it was dinner, and then everybody did their homework.
Yeah.
And it was like there was the five of us, at the dining room table or the kitchen table. We're all spread out. We're all working on projects. And she was going from kid to kid, making sure we got our homework done. And and I think back in the times, the hard times. I mean, we were bastards. There's just. I mean, the hormone. You get to be a teenager, your hormones are running. You don't want to go to school. There's just lots of different stuff that was going on.
Can you imagine wrangling 5 kids? That I had 3, and that was a freaking job.
And we were all a year apart. So so when I think back, my own story, but everybody else's story that had a mom, and not everybody is fortunate to have the moms and dads, but those that did, who had supportive parents, my God, it's a
difference maker. Because I see a little bit of myself in Gary. Like you're always running away from that situation you're in when you're young, right?
Yeah.
Like we were didn't have a lot of money when I was young, and my biggest fear is no money. So I am doing everything I can to get as far away from having no money as I possibly can. Right?
Right.
Yeah, it's just a driver, and it turned out to drive me in a good place. Right. I didn't start robbing people. I just started working harder. Right.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of that going on. But he sort of reached he's reached a thing where he's a brand and he's a thing in his own right, and it's almost like Maslow's hierarchy of needs. He's almost at self-actualization, right?
Yeah.
Now, more people don't realize Maslow added another layer to that thing just before he died, and it was like the giving back part.
Mm-hmm.
So you reach self-actualization. God, we sound like a couple of hippies here, right? And then the question is, what's next? And the answer is, you give back into society, you give back into your community, right? Which is where he sort of is right now, right?
Totally.
Yeah. So, he's at his age, he's got another 15, 20 years to run. There's a long way to go on that story, I say.
He has so much depth.
Yeah. It's inspirational. Like when I was going through college and university, my whole thing was just survive, get a D, get a C, survive, right? I had no one to look to who could see that story. He went from here to here and he did this and he got, that wasn't visible to me when I was going through school, and that's needed, right? If I want to be a boxer, I can model myself on several boxers.
Yeah.
I want to be a building services engineer. Please tell me, who's the Conor McGregor of building services engineers? I want to know.
Yeah. Yeah.
This is that is a role that is important and not out there very much, I think. And that's one of the reasons we do this, right? To try to those people and put them out there.
Yeah. Well, when I think about because we're now into our 104th show or something like that, or 5th show. I thought that we would see a trend and we'd be able to tell a story, a consolidated voice. But what we're actually experiencing, I think, here, Adam, is that we're developing several models, right? It's not just one model that's coming out. I mean, there are some consistencies and some, common threads, but what we're seeing is several different paths.
Yes.
To achieve the sort of this recognition, but self-fulfillment. Yeah. For people who are in the STEM world. And that's pretty cool.
But the one takeaway is for everybody here is he was a pretty good engineer, probably a great engineer. But what he did, he stuck his head above that. And did
totally.
Stuff, right? Yeah. And that's the trick, right?
Yeah.
Push yourself above where you are and see what happens. Sometimes you get your head blown off, but sometimes you don't, right?
But you will survive, right?
But you will survive. Yeah, that's a metaphorical thing.
Yeah.
Anyway, I found that quite inspirational. So let's wrap her up here, and I'll see you on the next one, yeah?
Thanks, Adam. Cheers, man.
Take care.
You've been listening to the Edifice Complex podcast with Adam Muggleton and Robert Bean. To access show notes for this episode, visit edificecomplexpodcast.com. If you have enjoyed this podcast, please leave us a review on iTunes. See you next time.